Hi, my name is Peter Matthess and welcome to the third part of the C172 development series by A2A Simulations. Let's begin this video with the climb-out phase. As soon as your aircraft lifts off the ground, you'll want to trim for a stable climb at 80 knots indicated, and also remember your pitch setting will be dependent on things like your center of gravity and your cargo loadout. As you get close to about 4,000 feet, you can start thinking about leaning out your mixture, but you must always remember that you should never lean your engine while putting out more than 75% power. Once in the cruise, build up your speed until you have at least 100 knots indicated, then adjust your RPM. At about 6,500 feet in the Cessna 172R, 75% power is about 2,300 RPM. But always consult the operating handbook for the best setting for your particular cruise level. This should now set us up for the next stage of our flight, which is leaning techniques. To begin with, there are two generally accepted ways of leaning your engine. The first is using your EGT gauge, and the second is leaning by ear. Let's discuss these two methods separately. Your EGT gauge is a gauge that monitors your exhaust gas temperature. This gauge is used to accurately adjust your mixture for best power and/or economy. First, adjust your power and settle the aircraft into the desired cruise setting at or below 75% power. Then, slowly pull your mixture out and watch the EGT gauge as it rises. At some point, the needle will reach its peak. Then, start coming back down. Mark this peak with your EGT reference needle. Now you can adjust your mixture based on this peak temperature reference. Each notch on the gauge represents 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you richen the mixture until the temperature is 2 notches below peak, this is 50 degrees rich of peak. The Cessna 172 Pilot's Operating Handbook recommends flying at or between peak and 50 degrees rich of peak. Although being more accurate, this is not the only way to lean. When a pilot becomes familiar with his aircraft, particularly the way it sounds, he can lean by listening for when the engine starts to get rough and the power loss is seen through RPM drop. And there we have the fundamentals of leaning. Now let's have a look at stalls in the Cessna. We're going to do a simple power off stall, just like a pilot would do in training for their PPL. As the speed slows, you will first hear the stall warning horn. Then shortly after, the nose will drop, marking the stall. You release the yoke and smoothly add power as the nose drops. If we lose a wing, we want to release the back pressure on the yoke and apply opposite rudder to level the wings. Here in the landing phase, your checklists are crucial. Sometimes we get rushed in talking to ATC and approaching the airfield, so that by the time we are ready, we are already in the middle of final approach. Get into the habit of running the before landing checklist before entering the pattern, and the landing checklist once established in the pattern. This helps you regulate your time better so that there is no one point where you have too much to do. When you rush things, mistakes are much more likely to happen. Landing the C172 takes practice. Ideally, you need the aircraft trimmed and stabilized with your desired flap setting in the final so that when you cross the threshold, you have a smooth descent rate. If your airspeed is above 70 knots, then you are more likely to balloon as you flare. This speed will depend on your flap setting, but the key to a good touchdown starts at the very beginning of the final approach when you get that plane stabilized with time to spare. Our final point is long-term care. A2A wanted me to mention that you should always remember your pre-flight. As with the landing, a good pilot always thinks in advance. Visit that maintenance hangar and keep on top of those oil levels. Also, remember that the aircraft is persistent. So if you leave your aircraft for more than 2 hours, sim or real time, always remember that if the temperature is below freezing, to plug in the engine heater. So that when you come back to your plane, even a few days later, the engine will be ready and warm for a nice trouble-free start. Thanks very much for watching, everyone, and we hope you've enjoyed this part 3 of the development series by A2A Simulations.